Markets continue to take a beating this week, even after a lower than expected inflation print on Wednesday. As the bloodbath continues to get worse, one can't help but ask, are we on the verge of a recession? If so, what does this mean for Bitcoin? Could the bull market be cut short once again? Today, with the help of Michael Saylor, we look at why all of this is a symptom of the underlying problem of our current system, and why everyone, including the US empire, needs a Bitcoin strategy now more than ever. The markets are absolutely cooked this week. Even after a brief relief after a lower than expected inflation print came out on Wednesday of 2.8%, markets have continued their downward momentum today. The S&P 500 has erased all of its post-election gains as the Trump pump completely deflates, and it's now down over 10% from its all-time high. And the Trump administration is starting to feel the pain. After barely talking about the stock market at all in the first few months in power, the White House is now talking about it daily. They have repeated the same mantra, that they're comfortable with short-term volatility and pain for long-term gain. And they say they remain confident that the market will recover in the coming months. You can imagine they are starting to feel the pressure though, especially with Trump at the helm and his history of using the stock market and health of the broader economy as a barometer of his success. And if they are in fact feeling the pain, it's for good reason. The damage is getting hard to ignore. Take a look at this chart comparing the S&P 500 returns in the first year of Trump's first term as president versus the first few months of his second term. Ouch. As we've mentioned in previous videos, Bitcoin's downturn is largely to do with US equities being down, and it's still somewhat ironically being treated as a risk-on asset. After Bitcoin's sharp sell-off early Monday, where we saw it go as low as $76,000, it has since rebounded and is now consolidating just above 80K. What are the chances the Trump administration is overshooting this and this turns into a more sustained downturn or a recession? Could that jeopardize the Bitcoin bull run and potentially cut it way short once again? Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was on CNBC today and was asked about the potential for a full-on recession.
You know, when you say that when we're in a period of detox, you used that word on CNBC last week, is that a euphemism for recession?
Not at all. It doesn't have to be, because it'll depend on how quickly the baton gets handed off. You know, our goal is to have a smooth transition. But I tell you, Sarah, the easy thing for us to have done would have been to come in and just keep this massive spending level going. And it's unsustainable. But could we have kept it going for a year, 2 years, maybe even 4? Maybe, but you're risking a financial calamity. So, we are trying to get this tax bill done. We are controlling expenses.
Bessent makes clear that what the Trump admin is attempting here is an almost Hail Mary fix to an unsustainable economic system headed for catastrophe. I think most Bitcoiners would agree that that's an apt description of the path the global economy underpinned by the US dollar has been on for the last 50 plus years. This debt-based monetary system has ballooned and gotten so out of control due to excessive money printing, it appears to be coming to or near the end. I give kudos to the Trump administration for at least recognizing and staring this reality in the face and attempting to fix it or at least slow the spiral. Whether or not they are successful in these attempts is yet to be seen. And I would argue that even if they are, it would only delay the inevitable. Because the fact remains, all fiat currencies trend to zero over time. And all of them throughout history have collapsed completely and given way to the next iteration. Although cutting government spending through Doge and restructuring international trade agreements is seen as the Trump admin's Hail Mary to stop a system-wide collapse, the actual Hail Mary is their shiny new strategic Bitcoin reserve, even if they don't fully recognize it yet. What they actually do with this Bitcoin reserve will, in my opinion, seal the fate of American economic dominance. Michael Saylor brilliantly outlined the real and profound use case of Bitcoin during his presentation to the Bitcoin Policy Institute earlier this week.
What's driving the growth of Bitcoin? It is the most powerful force in the world right now. It's growing nearly 60%. It's become the 8th largest asset in the world. It's about to become the largest asset in the world in the next 48 months. What is it? It's all of the smart money in the world running from risk, running from the past toward the future, from something less secure to something more secure. And they're doing it in the most visible way with their capital. This is a map of the wealth distribution in the world, about $900 trillion. If you break it into uses, half of it is just a store of value. We're preserving our capital for the long term. We just want to keep our money. The other half are assets held for utility. I want to do something with the asset. If you drill into the 450 trillion, you realize the problem is that long-term capital is being dissipated and decimated by fires, by floods, by famine, famines, by tariffs, by wars, by competition, by rust, by obsolescence, you name it, right? What's that cost? That costs $10 trillion a year. People go, what is Bitcoin's use case? The use case is to not suffer $10 trillion a year of damage from entropy, from inflation, from chaos, from the future. Bitcoin's an asset without the financial risk of a currency, a bond, a stock, and it doesn't have the physical risk of real estate and property. And we're stripping away the counterparty risk to everything. We're moving away from risk, and what that means is that as the word spreads that there's an opportunity to keep your money without taking risk, long-term capital is being merged into the Bitcoin network. The greatest digital transformation of the 21st century, it isn't the transformation of music, it isn't the transformation of your photos, your communications, your Facebook friends, or educational videos, although each of those things made a $1 trillion company. The greatest digital transformation is the transformation of capital. So it's the transformation of 450 trillion. What's it worth? It's worth half of everything. It's half of everything. That's the transformation.
Saylor then goes on to explain that Bitcoin's value appreciation engine isn't only due to network effects. It's actually much more profound than that.
And then, of course, many people say, oh, I get it, it's a network effect. It must be a network. Yeah, it's not a Metcalfean network. That's just enough information about networks to hurt yourself. It's not getting more powerful with the square of the number of nodes. It's getting more powerful based upon the amount of mass, energy, and capital flowing in the network. It's a Newtonian network, like the solar system. When the white dwarf comes past your planet, it's going to suck the atmosphere off your planet. A white dwarf is not the same as an asteroid the same size. They are different. Bitcoin is the brightest thing in the financial universe. Heat and light. It's the most interesting. It's growing stronger. It's growing hotter. It's growing denser as it draws the capital of the world into its orbit. What capital? Physical capital. People are selling their buildings. Financial capital. They're going to trade out their low-grade bonds, their currencies in third world and the second world. Foreign capital. They're going to sell their Siberian real warehouses and their Russian natural gas rights. It's drawing antiquated capital, the capital of the 20th century. It's drawing smart capital. Anybody that thought about it and thought, do I want to be invested in something that's going to decay or be destroyed over time by 100 uncertain risks, or do I want to just keep my money in cyberspace? And then digital capital, right? The AIs, they don't get the bank account. As the economy digitizes, people want to move digital money at the speed of light with 1 million transactions a second. You're not doing it with a Siberian warehouse. You're not doing it with natural gas or gold. You're not going to do it with any 20th century asset.
Saylor then brilliantly outlines how exactly the United States should pursue a Bitcoin strategy in order to fulfill their wishes to stay the dominant global superpower, and in their own words, become the Bitcoin superpower of the world.
So how should the U.S. pursue a Bitcoin strategy? Senator Lummis has given us a clear guideline with the Bitcoin Act in Nashville in July. It said, let's acquire 1 million Bitcoin over a 5-year period in a programmatic, disciplined fashion, transparent to all. And so let's consider the consequences of this strategy. First of all, last week, the president signed the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Order. If we hold that 200,000 Bitcoin for the next 20 years, even though you see a flat line on the screen, the flat line is worth $3 trillion. So that's the value of doing nothing. Sometimes people think that you have to do something to make money. Sometimes the absence of doing awful and stupid things is making money. Doing stuff is highly overrated if the stuff is trading or selling your Bitcoin. The Lummis bill would acquire a million Bitcoin or 1.2 million Bitcoin. If you look at the consequences of that over the time frame, it's worth $16 trillion to the nation. If the United States starts to more aggressively stockpile Bitcoin, it's going to accelerate the growth of the network. It's going to accelerate capital flowing in the network. It's going to increase and expand the overall digital capital network. If we move to a triple max strategy, you'll end up with 4 million Bitcoin. That's worth $73 trillion to America. And of course, President Trump has laid out a guideline. We should be the superpower. If you want a superpower strategy, here's a superpower strategy. acquire Bitcoin consistently. By the way, over what time frame? Consistently daily between now and the 0.99. 0.99 is January of the year 2035, the point at which 99% of the Bitcoin supply has been mined. The asset becomes effectively capped for all practical purposes because the last 1% comes out over 100 years. 0.99 between now and then you've got 10 years for the digital gold rush. You should get your Bitcoin before there's no more Bitcoin for you. And you can see here, in this strategy, we acquire it consistently, and then we use surpluses from the U.S. government to continue to save in Bitcoin. It's worth $106 trillion to the United States. And so what does that look like? The Lummis plan, which is grand, is modest in some ways, and a modest strategic Bitcoin reserve plan neutralizes the national debt. Sometimes doing modest things are actually brilliant as long as you do the thing. It's like the people that bought just a little bit of Bitcoin in 2012. It was a modest investment. It made them billionaires. A modest thing 20 years in advance is a brilliant thing. If you're more aggressive, the triple max plan negates the national debt. The Superpower plan creates a global superpower.
So the Trump admin might not yet know it, but the real Hail Mary is not cutting government spending with Doge and rebalancing the global economy through trade wars. The real Hail Mary is their Bitcoin strategic reserve, and what they do with it will seal the fate of the American empire over the next century and beyond. But what does this mean for average everyday citizens like me and you? Many people understandably see this US Bitcoin reserve and Saylor's extreme outline as evidence that Bitcoin has been captured. But in reality, nothing has changed with Bitcoin. And now more than ever, it's absolutely essential for individuals, families, and businesses of all sizes to learn about and buy into this world-changing technology. At its core, Bitcoin is simple. It's more ethical money. Pretty much all technology is amoral, meaning it can be used for good or for evil purposes. Think of the internet or AI, or even money in general. But I would argue that Bitcoin is the first technology that has an ethical framework at its core. Its hard cap supply is resistant, if not impenetrable, to theft, in that no single entity can increase the supply and steal from everyone else. In that way, you can also say it's resistant to fallible and nefarious human corruption. Its digital nature and powerful security through encryption means that for the first time ever, you can truly own something. If you have possession of your Bitcoin keys or knowledge of how to access those keys, you own it and no one can take it away from you. It is quite literally codified property rights. So in a world where government corruption, control, and theft through currency debasement is reaching epic proportions, and the entire debt-based system is being faced with imminent collapse, Bitcoin is the shining beacon of hope for preservation of the individual, the company, and the nation state in this life. So do the work, study Bitcoin, and preserve your ability to control your financial future and that of your family today. And if you know all of this already and have a healthy stack of Bitcoin in self-custody and want to upgrade your security, then Swan Vault might be for you. Swan Vault is a multi-signature custody solution where you vastly improve your security from loss or theft without sacrificing sovereignty. Visit swan.com/vault to learn more. And a quick shout out to Mara, the largest publicly traded Bitcoin miner, for supporting this show and for helping make Bitcoin the world's most decentralized and secure monetary network. I would love to hear what you think of all this, so leave a comment below with your thoughts, like this video, share it with friends and family, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next video. Thanks for watching, and remember, TikTok, next block.